You've just done an activity in which I asked you to identify the most important note in the melodic line, which we call the primary tone in a voice-leading analysis. I suggested that I think the primary tone here is C natural, the dominant of the F major key, and that this is established in bar 4, where it's the first note of the melody when it begins in the first violins. I also mentioned a few points where the music modulates through C major and B flat major, which we need to take into account when we describe the form of the section. Our background graph, then, looks like this. There's a very short initial ascent to the primary tone, which is note number 5 of the scale. Then, we expect to find that this primary tone is prolonged through the central part of the minuet, before a structural descent leads down to the tonic F. So this is the bare outline of the background we expect the movement to possess. Now, let's look at the minuet section by section to see how I have analysed it. First of all, we should listen to the first 10 bars, which form the first formal unit and are repeated. We've already decided that this section starts with a structural ascent leading up to the C in the upper voice in bar 4. I then want to analyse this section as 2 descents from this C in the upper voice, first down an octave to C, then down a fifth to F. Beethoven has cleverly constructed this winding melody so that it sounds as a logical linear descent to either the C or the F, with only a very slight change of harmony in the second to last bar. I'm not going to go into the foreground detail of how he achieves this, but since the first descent is what we call a register transfer, prolonging the C natural, I'm simply going to transfer the second descent to the background graph, showing it as a sequence of passing notes at this level. Now we come to the central section of the minuet, which is almost like a miniature development section, based around the descending motive which forms the first bar of the main melody. This starts with a modulation to C major, the dominant, and then back to F major. Analysing these bars is quite tricky because there are several counter-melodies beautifully set against each other. But I think that these bars are held together by an arpeggiation of the C major chord. The G7th in the first bar of the section leads to a C, which then rises through D to E. Then the melody skips up to the next note of the C triad, G natural. which is emphasized by an accented neighbour note. Then it rises to C, which is similarly emphasized. So I think that the move from the C harmony in bar 17 to the F harmony with a C natural at the top in bar 18 is the structural cadence of this little section. To show my understanding of these bars, I'm going to put the arpeggiation into the background graph. There then follows the first modulation to B flat. Here, the melody moves up to F, the tonic note of the whole movement. But I'm going to analyse these bars as subordinate to the harmony we've just reached. And I think this is made clear by the way that Beethoven reduces the orchestration in this passage. So, my analysis identifies register transfers, moving down an octave, and then this is repeated, and then repeated again, and taken down another octave. Now the main melody returns on the bassoon, but low down in the texture and in the wrong key, B flat. It's like a miniature false reprise, which is a fascinating parallel between this movement and the sonata form of the first movement, which you looked at in detail in the last unit. Anyway, here the melody falls yet another octave before it's joined by the violins and rises up the arpeggio of F to the C natural, which is the goal of this little section. Whilst these bars are a wonderful passage of music, in terms of the background structure of the movement, they serve only to prolong the F major harmony with a C in the top voice. And so we could miss them out from the background graph altogether. In fact, I'm going to indicate the outline of the register transfers to show that the B flat tonality is subordinate to the C major chord of bar 28. Now we come to the last section of the minuet, which begins with the continuation of the main theme, now back in the tonic key, and which ends with a lengthy series of dominant and tonic chords to close the minuet.